All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are taking a deep dive into something that affects pretty much all of us, but that we almost never see: the quality of the air inside our offices. We're going to be looking at the Reset Air Standard for commercial buildings, a system that's all about making the invisible visible. So just think about your workplace for a second. You see the desks, you see the lights, maybe you feel the temperature. But what if you could actually see the air quality? Like look up at a screen and see a real-time score for the air you're breathing in right now. What would that even look like? Well, that's exactly what the Reset Air Standard is all about. It's a whole system designed to take the guesswork out of indoor air quality. It does that by monitoring the air not just once, but continuously. And, this is the important part, making all that data totally transparent and available to everyone in the building. So in this explainer, we're going to cover 5 main things. We'll start with why we should even care about this, the invisible danger in our offices. Then we'll introduce this new standard. After that, we'll break down what they call the Healthy Air Scorecard. We'll see how we can actually trust the data. And finally, we'll walk through a 6-step plan for how it all gets put into action. Okay, first up, the problem itself. Look, poor indoor air quality is, well, it's a silent problem, right? We can't see the tiny particles or weird gases floating around us, but they can have very real effects on our health, our comfort, and even our ability to just focus and get work done. So, how do we fight an invisible enemy? Well, that brings us to a whole new way of thinking about air quality, moving away from just, guessing and hoping for the best to actually guaranteeing the air is healthy. Now, this is what I think is really cool about Reset. See, traditional standards are usually prescriptive. They give you a strict recipe, like you must install this specific filter or you have to use this exact ventilation system. But Reset is performance-based. It basically says, I don't care how you do it, just prove to me with real, continuous data that the air is actually healthy. This kind of flexibility is a game changer for modern offices where a one-size-fits-all recipe just doesn't cut it. Okay, so that leads to the big question, right? If it's all about performance, how do you keep score? What does good air actually mean? Let's take a look at the scorecard. This table right here is basically the heart of the whole standard. Reset hones in on 3 main culprits you find in indoor air: PM 2.5, TVOCs, and CO2. For a building to get certified, it has to prove that the daily average for these guys stays within the acceptable limits. And for those projects that want to go the extra mile, there are even tougher, high-performance targets. So let's break these down one by one. First, you've got PM 2.5, or particulate matter. These are microscopic particles, stuff like dust or exhaust from outside that creeps in. They are so incredibly small that they can get deep into your lungs and even into your bloodstream, which, over time, can cause some pretty serious health problems. And here is the magic number for those particles. To get that Reset certification, a building has to show, with data, that the daily average stays below 35 micrograms per cubic meter. And remember, this isn't a one-time test. It's about proving you can do this consistently, day in and day out. Next on the list are TVOCs. You know that new car or new office smell? A lot of that comes from TVOCs. They're basically gases that are let off by new furniture, new carpets, paints, even some cleaning products. That smell might fade, but the gases can stick around, and long-term exposure is definitely not great for your body. For these gases, the limit is 500 micrograms per cubic meter. And what's really useful here is that by monitoring this in real time, building managers can actually find the source of a problem. Maybe a new shipment of chairs is off-gassing like crazy, or a certain cleaning chemical is causing a spike. They can see it in the data and fix it. And last but not least, we have carbon dioxide, or CO2. Now this one's a little different because the main source of it indoors is us. We're constantly breathing it out. And in a room that's not well ventilated, CO2 levels build up, and it directly affects our ability to think. It is literally the reason you feel so sleepy and out of it in a long, stuffy meeting. So the number to watch for CO2 is 1,000 parts per million. You can think of this as a direct measurement of how fresh the air is. The moment levels start creeping above 1,000, studies have shown that our brain function literally starts to decline. That makes a super clear connection between the air we breathe and how well we perform at work. So we have our targets, but how in the world do we know the data is any good? I mean, you can't just stick a cheap sensor on the wall and call it a day, right? Right. So that brings us to how Reset builds trust and makes sure the data is rock solid. Yeah, Reset is incredibly strict about the hardware. They require high-quality, accredited monitors, and they even classify them into grades. Only grade A, which are the super accurate calibration level ones, and grade B, which are commercial grade, are allowed. Your typical consumer grade monitor, what they call grade C, just isn't reliable enough to be used for certification. And it's not just about what monitor you use, it's also about where you put it. The rules are all designed to get a true reading of the air that people are actually breathing. This means putting it in the breathing zone, not too high, not too low, and keeping it away from windows or air vents that could mess up the readings and give you a false sense of security. Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts. How does a company actually do all this? Well, Reset lays out a super clear 6-step plan to figure out exactly how many monitors are needed and where they all have to go. So here's the roadmap. You start by defining your space and counting up everybody who uses it. Then you figure out how many of those people need to be covered by the monitors. After that, you list out all the different kinds of spaces you have, offices, meeting rooms, cafes, whatever, and then you start placing monitors to cover each type of space, making sure they're all within range. Let's just walk through the example they give in the standard to make this real. So first step is getting a proper head count. And we're not just counting desks here. We're counting every single person who uses a space for more than an hour a day. In this particular project, that number came out to 129 people. All right, next, you decide on your goal. If you want full Reset certification, your monitors have to cover at least 80% of those occupants. So for this building, you do the math, and that means this system needs to represent the air that at least 104 people are breathing. And here's where it all comes together to give us a final number. For this example project, you'd start with 7 monitors just to make sure you have one in each type of space. But wait, that only covers 103 people. To hit our target of 104, we need one more. Oh, and that open workstation area? It's huge, over 500 square meters, so it needs an extra monitor just for coverage. So the grand total is 9 monitors. So what does all this add up to? The monitors, the data, the rules? It all comes back to one simple but really powerful idea: making the invisible visible. When the people inside a building, from the employees to the visitors, can see clear, reliable data about the air they're breathing, they suddenly have the power to understand it, to ask questions, and to demand healthier spaces. This transparency completely changes the conversation. It shifts us away from just hoping the air is good to taking data-driven action. It creates a whole new level of accountability, which really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Now that you know what could be in your air and that we have the technology to measure it, what are you going to do about it?